That's you're talking way too much, bro. I try to keep it simple. If I do that, buddy, I'm going to slump real quick. Just keep it simple. See ball, hit ball, man. This is as easy as you can make it.
And way easier said than done. I'm not sitting here saying it's easy, but we can't alibi it either. We got to figure out a way to continue to take those good at bats, and sometimes we still do that, and you don't get rewarded. And a couple of times that happened in the series too. So it's a combination of things.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Marty Time TV. I am Marty Caswell. We are brought to you by the all-new Hamul Casino Resort, the Players Place. And just so for those of you who watched that open with Manny Machado, C-ball, hit ball, and Mike Schilt, that was not from yesterday's dreary loss to the Diamondbacks. That was like from their first struggles back in May. But I feel like we're talking about the same issues. Before I go on, let me go ahead and welcome in my guest. You guys know him very well, Padres fans. He is Kyle Glaser of the wildly popular Friar Territory. Kyle, how are you today?
Doing all right, Marty. Glad to be back on with you. I think I'm doing better than the Padres, so that's the standard I'm going with right now.
Okay, I'm going to start with one positive note before we get going. Okay, just to make Padres fans feel better. I don't think anything will right now. They are currently 49-43. They have a +4 run differential. To make you feel better, the Rockies have a negative 251 run differential. I don't even know how that's possible. I should have looked this up ahead of time. I'm not sure what the all-time record is, but I feel like the Rockies are going to go ahead and smash it. All right, Kyle, let's get right to it. I'm going to try my best, my absolute best to get through today's show without talking about Martin Maldonado, because he's an easy punching boy. I know we keep talking to Mike Schilt about the catcher's production, him and Elias Diaz, but he wasn't brought here to produce. And I think that's become such a focus because the rest of the guys they depended upon aren't producing, and the bench is so bad. Yes. So let's move past that just briefly. Here's the question, as we are 3 weeks away from the deadline, actually 2.5. It's a question of, can the Padres be buyers or should? Which one right now do you think they're contemplating, just based on how they're playing?
Right now, given AJ Preller's history of when they are on the fringe of playoff contention, they typically are small buyers. You look to 2015, you look to 2023. They didn't make any huge, big, impactful, splashy trades where you're trading 3 or 4 top prospects for an all-star or a Cy Young caliber type of player or an MVP contender. It's been more the small trade upgrade type of deals. 2015, I go back, they acquired Mark Zepchinski. 2023, that was Garrett Cooper, G-Man Choi, Rich Hill, that whole group. Obviously didn't do a whole lot to help.
That's what I was thinking about. G-Man Choi, that deadline was just like, oh, really? Okay, well.
Yeah, so realistically, given the level this team is playing at, it's very, very hard to say, yes, this is a team we believe in. We should mortgage the future for a chance to win it all this year. This team has just not shown for 2 full months now that they have a competitive offense. And look, the pitching staff has done a great job. This is a very good base running team. This is a very good defensive team. But this offense is bottom 5 in baseball in every category over the last 2 months. And it's very, very hard to say, yes, we should go and be aggressive and acquire multiple impact players when this is just not a team that's shown they're worth investing in.
There's been, I know we'll talk trade rumors, but they've been linked to everybody because that's what AJ Preller does. Duran of the Red Sox has been like the name. I mean, this isn't like you're not trading for one of the best players in baseball. He's not like a huge impact bat, right? What does adding Duran even add to this Padres team other than you have someone in left field, you have that position, you can use Gavin Sheets at DH, but how does that really help everything that ails this team offensively?
Well, Jarren Duran right now doesn't figure to be going anywhere. The Red Sox are a game out of playoff contention. They're in a great spot. They're not a team right now that's going to trade. And everyone says, well, they traded Rafael Devers. That was a totally different situation where there was major conflict between him and the front office. He was owed hundreds of millions of dollars the Red Sox didn't want to pay. Jarren Duran is still under team control. He's very, very cheap, very, very productive, and has been a big part of the Red Sox offense performing near the top of the league recently. Realistically, I think it's a moot point because the Red Sox aren't going to move him. And if they did, theoretically, he would certainly be a big upgrade for the Padres. Again, line drive hitter, has speed, really good defender in left field, can shift to center if you need. So he would certainly be a nice player, a nice addition. But it's not like he single-handedly would take the Padres offense from 29th in OPS to top 10. I mean, they might go from 29th in OPS to 25th. This is not a team that's one player away. They need 3 or 4 guys currently in the lineup to really step it up. And realistically, there's 3 or 4 spots in the lineup right now that just, if you want to be a playoff team, you cannot have that level of production, and they would need to make replacements, but there's contractual issues with some of those.
Okay, I lied. Here I am talking about Martin Maldonado. I really thought genuinely that the last time the Padres sent down Luis Campusano, that was going to be the end of us talking about Luis Campusano. But I feel like this team is so desperate, they may have to go ahead and bring him back. And if they do, they cannot do what they did last time, where you have him on the bench. He doesn't know why he's there. You don't play him. You have him pinch it against like Kike Hernandez and a team. I mean, that's pointless. I just feel like if they're going to bring him up, they have to commit to him, have him start behind the plate, because he sees himself as a catcher, not a DH, not a first baseman, not a part-time player. And he's that guy where I just think that his offense is linked to his defense and where he's playing. Do you think that's going to happen? Because they cannot keep rolling out Maldonado and pinch hitting him for him like in the 4th inning.
So the Padres completely botched and mishandled the way they brought up Luis Campusano the first time. Really, the second time, I should say, giving him 10 at-bats in 3 weeks and then throwing him in against the Diamondbacks. Of course he's going to look sped up. Of course he's going to overswing. Of course he's going to look overwhelmed. Any player getting 10 at-bats in 3 weeks and then being thrown into the starting lineup is not going to look good. I don't care who you are. That's not conducive to success. Yeah. I've been saying for weeks, Luis Campusano is one of the 9 best hitters in the Padres organization. Presently, not future, presently.
Okay.
And given the state of the Padres offense, he needs to be in their lineup every day. No excuses, no exceptions. I've heard all the reasons why he's not. None of them are frankly valid.
Right.
That said, it would need to be as a DH. The thing you have to understand about Luis Campusano, first of all, let's talk about him as a hitter. Projects to be an above average hitter with a, average to above average power in the majors. His production would actually look a lot like Gavin Sheets, 260, 20 homers. And we've seen how impactful Gavin Sheets has been offensively. Defensively, there are some issues. With Luis Campusano, the receiving has always been not quite what you want it to be. And the intangible aspects of catching, focus, maturity, leadership, they have always left a lot to be desired. There are a lot of pitchers who have said they do not like throwing to Luis Campusano, both privately and publicly. He was able to establish a good rapport with Joe Musgrove at the end of 2023. That was an interesting development, but there are some real issues there defensively. So I think if you're the Padres, if Luis Campusano could catch, he would be catching. The issue is realistically, he's better off as the Padres everyday DH. And that's where he would come up and be an impactful player for them right now. Stick him in the 8th spot. And frankly, once he gets acclimated, you can move him up to the 6th spot, given the level of production he's capable of. This should have happened weeks ago. The Padres are just wasting time. They're wasting at-bats and they're wasting games by leaving him in AAA. Simple as that.
I completely agree. And I just wonder if he's going to be someone that's possibly in a trade package, because I just feel like both sides, there's a lot of trust lost on both sides. And I almost think the best thing for Luis Campusano at this point is to probably move on to another organization. But the Padres are so desperate, and I don't really know what options are out there behind the plate that they could trade for that would make it really much of a difference offensively.
Yeah.
But
there is one that I think is worth highlighting, but the money's a little tricky. And that's Shawn Murphy with the Atlanta Braves. So the Braves are out of it. They're not going to go through a full rebuild, but they are going to look to do a little bit of a reset. And one of the interesting dynamics there is Drake Baldwin, their young catcher, has really stepped up and shown himself to be a very, very significant part of the Braves' future. He has cut into Shawn Murphy's playing time. Shawn Murphy is a great defensive catcher with a railgun of an arm. He can hit for power. When healthy, he hits for average. Even now, in a season where he's dealt with injuries, been kind of a part-time player, seeing 230 with an 800 OPS, playing really good defense behind the plate. That would be a massive upgrade for the Padres. The concern is just the money. He's owed, he's on his $15 million contract this year. He's owed $15 million a year in future years. Given the Padres' payroll situation, they'd have to get creative in terms of moving some money, maybe getting the Braves to pay down a little bit. Whether that could happen or not, who knows? But if you're looking solely at personnel out there, Shawn Murphy is the guy they should target and frankly use all of their prospects and financial resources to go get. He solves their catching issues not just this year, but in future years too.
Okay, that would be very interesting. Shawn Murphy, I'll write that one down. I'm not too hopeful of that, but that's the guy that you think would make the most sense if they can get the money figured out and be creative there with AJ Preller. Okay, that leads me to my next question. Because we have not heard from the Padres' new chairman, John Seidler, as to the plans for this team, trust in AJ Preller. Maybe he'll speak to the media at some point. I don't know. I saw he was on the field with Eric Grupner and AJ Preller and Mike Schultz on Tuesday when they honored Manny Machado for hit number 2,000. But other than that, we have heard nothing from him. So how much leeway does AJ Preller have to go ahead and make a significant move that would take perhaps some prospects, that would take money? If the Padres do not figure it out, find a way in the playoffs, is AJ Preller even a GM for the Padres come next season? Final year of his contract.
So in terms of making acquisitions this year, what's very, very tricky and why they're limited from making the huge big splash trade, they do have some players in their farm system. It's not just Salas and DeVries and nothing else. They actually do have some really good young pitchers in the system.
Yes.
But that's not enough to go get, what they did where they acquired, we'll get Juan Soto and Josh Hader in the same year. They don't have nearly enough to do anything like that from a prospect perspective. On top, or you think about the offseason where they went and got Yu Darvish, Joe Musgrove, and Blake Snell in the same offseason. They don't have anywhere near the prospect capital to do that.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, where they are, it's not just their payroll, but it's their luxury tax payroll. So their payroll's around $211 million. Their luxury tax payroll is actually up around $260 million. They're still paying Eric Hosmer. They still have some dead money on the books. And it's a situation where they don't want to go over that second luxury tax threshold. They want to try and stay under it as much as they can. And that's right about where they're at right now. Because once you go over that, you start incurring some significant penalties in terms of taxes. Depending on how many years you're over, you could lose draft picks, move down the draft order. There's a lot of penalties there. So for the Padres, staying under that second luxury tax threshold is something they want to do and is a limiting factor in who they can acquire. It doesn't mean they won't do it, but it is a very serious consideration. In terms of what John Seidler wants, look, he has not spoken publicly much at all, so I don't want to put words in his mouth. Generally speaking, the message I have heard both publicly and privately from people within the Padres organization on both the business side and the baseball side is they want to maintain the status quo. That is the goal. That is the hope. That is the idea behind everything they're doing. So I don't foresee a scenario where Preller gets fired if they don't make the playoffs after this season, but there's no question it would be hard to extend him if they fall flat again this year, knowing that next year's the last year of his contract. Okay,
that's very interesting. We saw it happening with the Washington Nationals. They went and cleaned house, man. I mean, this was the final year, right, for Rizzo, so that made sense. But
yeah,
how many lame duck GMs are out there right now in the final season?
Well,
how common is that for managers? It's usually not. When you're in your final year, usually you either fire them or you extend them. So how common is it for a GM when you have to make all those big decisions to go into a lame duck season?
It's very, very rare to see a GM go into a lame duck season. One thing with the Nationals to keep in mind is a different scenario. The Nationals had lost the second most games of any team since 2020, behind only the Rockies. So it was 5 seasons of just awful, awful baseball. Even though they hit on some trades, there was a decade of bad drafts. They were just a terrible team. And even though they had made some solid trade acquisitions, including some guys from the Padres.
They hit on some trades. Tell us about that, Kyle.
Yeah, getting C.J. Abrams, Mackenzie Gore, and James Wood. From a team-wide perspective, it wasn't getting any better. So that's the kind of scenario where you see a move like that made, especially a week before the trade deadline. That's very rare. In terms of lame duck GMs, GM contracts are not actually public, so it's actually not known how many are lame ducks. Normally, you start hearing about, they're in their last year. I think a few years ago, Billy Epler with the Angels, after years and years and years of struggles there, the Angels very quietly gave him a 1-year extension. Ultimately, it still didn't work. They did end up firing him. But at the end of the day, again, what John Seidler wants to do, I don't want to put words in his mouth. It is an unknown. But generally speaking, when GMs have 1 year left on their deal and there isn't a long track record of failure, you will see, even if it's just a 1-year extension, something to keep them on just a little bit longer.
Okay, it'll be interesting. Hopefully, I know Padres fans are getting restless. They want to hear from John Seidler. They want to hear from Grupner. They want to find out, is this ownership group committed to investing with this particular window? Because I just think that, man, after this season, the Padres could look significantly different. You're not going to have Michael King, Dylan Cease, who we'll get to that next. Dylan Cease isn't going to be here, possibly Luis Arraez, Robert Suarez. I mean, this team could look remarkably different come next season. This, to me, is an important window for the Padres. All right, on to Dylan Cease. How much money has Dylan Cease cost himself in free agency, given his struggles, his mind-boggling struggles of 2025?
A lot. If you look at what he did last year, you say, hey, we think Dylan Cease is back to being the ace we saw with the White Sox. There was a real chance he was going to push that $180, $200 million range. This year, with what he's done consistently now, pitching to a 4.5, high 4 ERA with a lot of contact allowed. I mean, someone pitching always is valuable. We see guys with ERAs in the sixes getting $15 million a year sometimes on short deals. I still think he'll get $100 million, but from possibly $200 million, I mean, he probably has cost himself $80 to $100 million with how he's performed so far this year. That said, if he has a great second half, whether it's with the Padres or someone else, that could change. There's still a lot of baseball left, so I don't want to sit here and say that is definitely what is happening. But if he were to enter the market today, yeah, he would get about $100 million less than he would have compared to last offseason.
I know the Padres have some good news on Michael King. Actually, well, they have some optimistic news on Michael King. He's going to throw a full bullpen, according to himself, today. He felt good after throwing from 120 feet on Tuesday, 15 pitches or so. He said today, man, he's ready to go ahead and go. How attractive a candidate is Michael King going to be? Should he come back this season, just given the nature of that historic injury, according to how Mike Shildt phrased it?
It all is going to depend on how he looks. If he comes out and has 3 dominant starts before the trade deadline, again, with about 15 days between the All-Star break and the trade deadline, in theory, he should get 3 starts. If he looks dominant and he looks like the Michael King pre-injury and the medicals check out and other teams aren't worried about it, the Padres could definitely fetch something very, very valuable. Again, he has a player option for next year, so the contractual aspect is something that needs to be factored in as well. But just from a pure performance perspective, if he comes back, has 3 great starts, teams are going to want him. Teams always want starting pitching, especially a guy who, frankly, has pitched at the level of a frontline starting pitcher at a salary well below what most frontline starting pitchers cost.
Kyle, this is going to shock you. I do not watch a lot of high school baseball. I don't watch a lot of college baseball. The draft is coming up this weekend, and that's a baby of yours. What are some of the names that you're hearing about when it comes to the Padres?
Yeah, there are 2 players in particular the Padres are really, really dialed in on, 2 high school players up in the Pacific Northwest. Schoolcraft, a 6'8" left-handed pitcher from an Oregon high school, sits 93, 94, has been up to 97, has a great changeup that projects to be a swing and miss pitch. Slider's a little bit inconsistent, but that's what player development is for. Good body control, good athlete, a lot of things to like. He's option A for the Padres. He's the guy they've really dialed in on. If he is there at the 25th overall pick, I would expect him to be the player the Padres take. There's also a very real chance he won't be there at number 25. There's a lot of teams interested. He could very well go in the middle of the first round, and no one would be surprised. If Cruz Schoolcraft isn't there, Xavier Nyans, a left-handed hitting high school third baseman from Washington State, would be option B. He'd be the one that the Padres would pivot to. Big time power. You can dream on 30 plus home run power. He's got a good swing too. It's not like it's an all or nothing kind of hitter. Definitely has a chance to hit for enough average and get to his power enough to be an impactful middle of the order hitter. He's got a rocket for an arm. He's going to be a third baseman long term. He's more than fine over there. So there's some swing and miss concerns with him a little bit, and that's why he's more of a back of the first round candidate than a top half of the first round candidate. But he would be the guy, if Cruz Schoolcraft isn't there, that the Padres pivot to.
Very interesting. Okay, good stuff. All right, my last question.
Yeah.
And I wasn't expecting to go here. Listen, back in April, we were looking at the people who cover baseball. We're looking at the National League West. Padres, man, that's a playoff team. Look out. They've got the superstars. They have blue chip players. They get a deep rotation. And the NL West was the best division in baseball.
Yeah.
The Dodgers have lost 6 games in a row. They still have a healthy lead because the division kind of sucks. Should the Dodgers be sellers? I'm just joking. But how... What do you make of this division? I think the Central with the Cardinals and the Brewers and the Cubs, that to me is the best division in baseball. But what do you make of the NL West and the issues the Dodgers have, man?
The Dodgers is just injuries. They have been so decimated by pitching injuries, having 14 starters on the injured list. Let's be clear. The fact they had 14 pitchers on the IL, including most of their best starters and a lot of their key relievers. If that happened to the Padres record would look like the Rockies. If that happened to the Giants, the Giants record would look like the Rockies. The fact that the Dodgers withstood 14 pitching injuries, including most of their top guys, and are still in first place is absolutely incredible and just speaks to the depth of talent the organization has amassed. With them, look, the offense has definitely struggled up against the Brewers, especially this last week. Again, the Brewers have a great pitching staff. They always pitch well. over the course of 162, look, the Dodgers are going to get theirs. I'm not worried about, yeah, they've struggled a little bit. They've also had one of the best records in baseball, if not the best record in baseball, for good chunks of the season, despite being nowhere near full strength. In terms of what's happened to the rest of the division, it's very simple. The Padres and Giants can't hit. If you look since May 15th, the Padres and Giants have 2 of the 5 lowest OPSs in baseball. The Padres have the 2nd worst OPS in baseball. The Giants have the 4th worst OPS in baseball. Both teams have real problems at the bottom of the order. Mm-hmm. Both teams have not gotten quite the production they wanted or hoped for from their stars. And they play in very, very pitcher-friendly ballparks. Both teams have really good pitching staffs that are keeping them afloat. Both teams' offenses are not just bad in the sense of, oh, they're not performing. We're talking worst offenses in baseball. We're talking down near the White Sox. That's where these offenses have been. From the Diamondbacks side, injuries and their pitching has just not been good. They have the opposite problem with the Giants.
Oh, their pitching, except against the Padres. Their pitching has been outstanding against the Padres, including Fat last night, getting to the 8th inning for the first time in his career. I mean, enough with tipping your cap.
And that's exactly it. The Padres scoring 6 runs in 3 games against this Diamondbacks pitching staff is, I'm not going to call it the nadir of their season, but it's close. It's a really, really, really embarrassing showing. And frankly, one that does not inspire much confidence that anything is getting better. Again, it's not been a bad week. It's not been a bad 2 weeks. It's been a bad 2+ months now, or 2 full months, I should say. And nothing is changing. And expecting it to just magically change, I think, is just an overly passive mentality that is not going to bear fruit.
And they have coming in this weekend at Petco Park, where I think is maybe the best team in the National League. The Philadelphia Phillies rolling into Petco. What we're talking about come Monday at the All-Star break could be like, man, they've got to go ahead and sell these pieces because they could be buried. I mean, we'll see what happens. The Padres might shock us, but man, based on the past 2 months, I don't know. I'm expecting them to go ahead and snap out of it offensively this weekend. All right. Do you have anything else I wanted to ask you? There is, but I can't remember what it was. So Kyle Glaser, man, you are awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Are you going to be doing anything special on the draft come Sunday?
Well, I actually had a special draft preview edition of Friar Territory that just dropped last night.
Oh, nice.
It's out, so I definitely would check it out if you get a chance.
Okay, good.
On Twitter, YouTube, dive deep into the Padres, who they're focused on, who they're targeting, the 25th overall pick. Also, some talk about the latest buzz around who the number 1 overall pick is going to be by the Nationals, number 2 overall pick by the Angels, and a look at some players with San Diego area ties. There's a couple of them who project to be first-round picks, guys from San Diego or the greater San Diego area. So a lot of good stuff. I encourage everyone to check it out.
That's great stuff. By the way, last thing in the draft, I used to love, I would jump in the Zooms and we would talk to the player like the Robert Hassel. The reason why I've stopped doing that is because I fully expect AJ Preller to trade that player in 2 to 3 years. And so, I'll meet you. Great. Welcome to San Diego, blah, blah, blah. But I'll never see you again in a Padre uniform. So good luck to you. That's been my philosophy when it comes to the Padres draft. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. By the way, I lost my normal blue headphones. So I had to borrow my nephew's. He's 7 years old. I had to borrow his school headphones. So I look like a clown today. So
no, actually, I like it. It's stylish.
Oh, you do, huh?
I actually like it. It works.
Either he has a giant head or I have a small head. I'm not sure which one. All right. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for your time. We are brought to you by the all-new Hamul Casino Resort, the Players Place. Man, hopefully they can figure it out because I did well. I promised you I would not spend too much time talking about MM. We made it. Have a great day, Kyle, and I'll look forward to seeing you at Petco Park.